Jennifer McAllister is Zach's mom, who moves him to the small town of Cheyenne, Wyoming, to start a new job as a social worker to provide for them. Jennifer was always there right from the beginning of the first notes of the show and didn't really change much from those original ideas. She started off being a lot more positive when it came to the move to Cheyenne, but as I began to develop her a bit more, I wanted her to be more sympathetic, supportive, and understanding of Zach's feelings. Originally, her and Zach's relationship with his father wasn't really addressed. As I added more backstory to their characters, his father became a more integral part of who they are and where they start off in the story. Jennifer is very much inspired by my own mother, along with a lot of motherly figures in my life. I wanted to create a character who would encourage Zach no matter what emotion he's feeling or what circumstance he's going through. What I really think is unique about Jennifer is that she's raising a son who's biracial, who doesn't know where he belongs. I think it's an interesting story dynamic that I don't really see a lot in animation. I really wanted her to be a representation of parents who are raising biracial children who might not know exactly the best way to raise them if they're questioning their own identity. I hope that the character of Jennifer can inspire parents of biracial children to keep loving their kids, helping them accept themselves for who they really are. Curtis Rodriguez is Zach's bully when Zach first moves to Cheyenne, Wyoming and starts attending Cheyenne Junior High. When I first created him, he was much more of a popular jock trope. He was captain of the basketball team and was dating Angela, who was head cheerleader. He also had a best friend named Ty, who would just agree with everything he would say. As I developed him a bit more, I wanted to subvert the trope and make him into a mathlete instead, but still have him look and act like a bully. I also cut Ty out to streamline the amount of characters and the story aspect of him and Angela dating. I wanted to add a bit more diversity into the show, so I changed him from white into a Latino character. I had a lot of Latino friends growing up and wanted to put a character like that into the series. As more drafts were written, I wanted his character to be a bit more empathetic, so I changed him into not being the popular kid and having him be a bully due to his insecurity from being the smartest kid in school. Originally, he was just a foil to Zach, but became a lot more integral to the plot. A couple of my friends thought it would be more interesting if he pushed Zach into the bush that the watch was hidden in. I wanted to create a character who represented the negative side of letting your insecurities take control of you. I hope Curtis can show people that they can accept themselves for who they are and all their gifts. Rebecca North is the director of the Secret Intelligence Agency who oversees the creation of the Time Traveling Watch. I knew that I needed a character who would be the head of the agency and oversee the operations. When I first created North, she was originally a man. I quickly changed her into a woman because I saw that I had hardly any female characters in the show, besides Zach's mom, Angela, at that point. I really thought that it'd be interesting to have a female character in an authoritative role, and it was something that I hadn't seen a lot in animation. Her character pretty much stayed the same from the first notes that I wrote for the character. But first, she was very closed off and wasn't really warm to Zach. After developing her character a bit, I decided to make her a little bit more open to Zach and a bit more of an encouragement to him. She's very much inspired by Amanda Waller from the DC Comics series, and I always want to see more characters like that in television. What I'm excited most about North is that she isn't one to sit behind a desk and give out orders all day, but isn't afraid to jump into the action and take charge. This isn't something that I see a lot from behind the desk authoritative type characters. Also, the fact that she's a black woman in power was something that was really important to me to put into the show. My hope is that she can inspire people to believe in themselves that anything is possible if you put enough hard work into it. Angela Wong is Zach's crush when he first moves to Cheyenne, Wyoming and starts attending Cheyenne Junior High. When I first created her, she was much more of a popular girl trope. She was head cheerleader and dating Curtis, who was the star of the school's basketball team. As I developed her more, I decided to make her more academic, but still popular in dating Curtis, who I changed into a mathlete, and that story aspect stayed for a while. As I developed the story a bit more, I actually cut her character out to streamline the amount of characters when the story used to just be a short pilot. I then decided to expand the story into a full-length season and was able to put Angela back in the show. Originally, I created a character named Cindy, who would be one of the friends that Zach makes when he first comes to school, but then I decided to replace her with Angela to make her one of the friends that Zach would eventually make. I also cut the dating relationship that she and Curtis originally had. I wanted to add a bit more diversity into the show, so I changed her from white into an Asian character. I had many Asian friends growing up, and several aspects of her personality were very much inspired by those friends. I wanted to subvert the romance trope and have her and Zach's friendship grow naturally first, before potentially going into a romantic relationship. I hope that Angela can inspire people to be confident in who they are, not be afraid to make the right choices, and stand up for others. Mr. Emmett is Zach's history teacher when Zach moves to Cheyenne, Wyoming and starts attending Cheyenne Junior High. In the original notes for the show, Emmett didn't exist. Originally, Becket was Zach's science teacher who would teach by day and work on the watch by night. As I continued to develop the story, I decided to have Becket just be a scientist and created Mr. Emmett to be a teacher. He was only supposed to be in one episode because Becket was going to replace him as a fake teacher after tracking down the watch to the middle school. But I ended up changing that again to keep Zach's normal life and his Asian life completely separate. He also changed from a science teacher who talked about the concept of time travel to an English teacher who talked about time travel stories. This idea stayed in for a long time, but I decided to change it because most of the time travel lessons would be coming from Becket at the Secret Intelligence Agency. so he became a history teacher instead, who would teach on different times in the past. This would give Zack fun ideas of places to potentially go back in time to. Emmett's name is inspired by the character of Emmett Brown from Back to the Future, one of the main inspirations for the show. He is based on a lot of teacher characters from cartoons I grew up watching as a kid. I'm really excited to see his funny dynamics with the student characters, especially Zack, who's always late for his classes. Thompson is one of the top agents at the Secret Intelligence Agency who was assigned to be Agent Becket's handler as he creates the time-traveling watch. In the original notes for the show, Thompson, along with Agent Christine Glover, didn't exist. Originally, he was just a background agent who didn't have much personality at all, except for being backup for Becket. As the story developed, I decided I want Becket's agents to have a bit more characterization, so I gave him a name and a bit of a unique look. He, along with many of the characters in the show, are named after characters and actors from the movie Back to the Future, one of the inspirations for the show. He's actually named after Leah Thompson, who plays Lorraine McFly. I decided to name him after Thompson instead of Glover, so it wouldn't be obvious who they are named after. As I developed the show a little further, I gave him more of a distinct personality in order to differentiate him from the other agents, especially from Glover. So I decided to make him more logical, skeptical, and analytical, very much inspired by Spock from Star Trek. I feel like he, along with Glover, represent two sides of my own personality, the logical, practical side, and the more fun-loving, adventurous side. What I'm excited to see about Thompson is him loosening up, realizing that life doesn't always go as planned. I hope that audiences will be able to relate to him and his perspective. Kendall Campbell is Zack's best friend when Zack first moves to Cheyenne, Wyoming and starts attending Cheyenne Junior High. Kendall was always there right from the beginning with the first notes for the show. Originally, he was a lot nerdier and fearful, like Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron or Chucky Finster from Rugrats. His original design was also inspired by those characters and stayed that way for a while. He was also one of two friends that Zack would meet on his first day, whose name was Cindy. As I started developing the story, I cut Cindy out to streamline the amount of characters a bit more. Also, in the original notes, Kendall found out about Zack's time-traveling watch and kept the secret with him, and that stayed for a while. A lot of my friends thought it'd be more interesting if Zack only knew about the watch and the origin story. Later on, I wanted to add a bit more diversity into the show, so I changed him to a black character. With that, I changed his personality a bit by making him a little less nerdy and a bit more of a wannabe cool kid, but still pretty geeky. I based his and Zack's friendship a lot on Peter Parker and Ned Leeds from Spider-Man Homecoming, because that was very much like the friends I had when I was in middle school. He was also based on a lot of me growing up as someone who was trying to be cool but never really quite got there. I hope that Kendall can be able to remind people of those friends they had growing up. William Pierce is an infamous mercenary who was hired by James Hale to find and steal the time-traveling watch created by the Secret Intelligence Agency. In the original notes of the show, Pierce didn't exist. Originally, Hale would carry out his own missions and have a couple of henchmen there as backup. As the story developed, I decided to have Hale be more of a villain who works in the shadows and commands others to carry out his missions, so I decided to make one of the henchmen go after the watch for him. As the story developed even more, I really wanted to give the henchman a little bit more personality, so I gave him the name William Pierce and made him stand out visually from the other henchmen. I named him Pierce to give him the name that sounded a little threatening, kind of like, he'll pierce you if you don't give him what he wants. He's very much inspired by Darth Vader from Star Wars, but the Terminator was originally very emotionless and focused on the mission at hand. But later on, I wanted to give him a little bit more personality and have him enjoy the fact that he's the most intimidating guy in the room. What excites me most about Pierce is his dynamics with the other characters, especially with Hale. I wanted their relationship to be very rocky and that they would bump heads a lot, which would pay to a lot of moments of comedy. I think Pierce represents the side of everyone who wants to live without rules and restrictions. Richard Becket is the head scientist at the Secret Intelligence Agency who creates the time-traveling watch. When I first created Becket, he was just a straightforward scientist whose only goal was to create the watch. A lot of that carried over to the final version of Becket, where a head character designer drew him with tired eyes and messy hair, and that really inspired me to rewrite him as an exhausted character who just wants another cup of coffee to get through the workday. I think that added a much more interesting dynamic to his character and stayed. Originally, he was going to live a double life like Zack, where during the day, he would be Zack's science teacher, and at night, he would be working on the watch at the agency. But then I decided for him to be a scientist at the SAA and created the character of Mr. Emmett to be the teacher instead. I knew that he was always going to be a mentor to Zack, and originally, he was very supportive of him from the start. But as the story developed, I decided to have his and Zack's relationship be rocky at the very beginning. I was really inspired by the relationship between Miles Morales and Peter B. Parker from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. What I'm excited about Becket is that he's a very self-centered character, and the most challenging thing that could happen to him is for him to be a mentor to a kid. I really wanted to create a character who has to open himself up to change and is forced to be selfless. Zack McAllister is the protagonist of Zack In Time, who finds the time-traveling watch. When I first created him, I always knew he was going to be a middle schooler because that's the time in a lot of kids' lives when they start to figure things out. He was always going to be a kid who moved to a small town like I did when I was in middle school. Originally, he moved with his mom and his little sister, whose name was going to be Susan, but then I decided to just be him and his mom to streamline the amount of characters. I also decided I didn't want his dad to be in the picture so that other characters can fill in the role of a father figure. He was also written as a spoiled and bratty teenager, but I wanted him to be more relatable, so I made him more naive and innocent. I based him off a lot of young protagonists I grew up watching on TV, specifically Danny from Danny Phantom and Virgil from Static Shock. I wanted to create a character who was curious, a little insecure, and someone who could mature over time. What I think is unique about Zack is that he's biracial, half black, half white. That's something I don't see a lot in animation, and I thought would bring an interesting dynamic to the character and the story of the show. I think a lot of people can relate to questioning who they are and not knowing where they belong, and I hope Zack can inspire others to appreciate themselves for who they are and help them know that they have a place that they can belong.